Rock and Stone miners, I'm your host, Get Good Fox, and welcome to the March 2nd, 2023 Deep Dive and Elite Deep Dive weekly strategy guide, giving you the tips and tricks you need to get those sweet Matrix cores. First, I'm going to go over the Deep Dive, then the Elite Deep Dive, then we'll round things out at the end with my character class and equipment recommendations. And of course, remember, if you'd like to see me go through these deep dives in real time live, catch me at Twitch at Get Good Fox. But let's go ahead and get started with the deep dive, which is going to occur in the dense biozone. And right off the bat, let me say that I was surprised. This deep dive was a little bit harder than normal, not overwhelmingly hard. The third mission, though, is rather spicy. But let's begin with mission 1. It's going to have a hazard level of 3. Your objectives will be to collect 250 Morkite and 2 alien eggs. One of them will cause a swarm, and there's a mutator in play, warning lethal enemies. What that's going to do is double the melee damage of your enemies, but only the melee damage, not the spitting attacks or the stomping attacks, just the melee attacks. But that does mean that the slashers will be very painful, so if you're not as experienced in the game, you might need to drop an ammo pod, maybe even 2. I was able to get through it without any ammo pods, but yes, if you need to use an ammo pod, just do it, because you don't really want to play around when you've got lethal enemies, especially if you're still learning to, if you're still mastering the game. But otherwise, it is a fairly normal mining expedition style mission. Let's move on to mission 2, though. And mission 2 will raise the stakes to hazard 3.5. That said, I don't really think the 0.5 is a big difference, or maybe a difference at all. I don't notice it. Your objectives will be to salvage 2 mules. That does mean a complete salvage operation. If you just had to get the mules alone, it would say repair. So you will have to do the full drop pod defense and recovery. You'll also need to collect 2 alien eggs, so expect 1 more swarm out of them. And overall, I would say that this is a probably easier mission, mainly because you don't have the mutator in effect. You should be able to recover a lot of nitra here. Remember that the mules are going to give you more nitra. Otherwise, this should feel like a pretty standard Hazard 3 salvage operation. But let's move on to mission 3. Alright, so mission 3 is the spicy one of the set. Difficulty stays at hazard 3.5, and your objectives will be to protect the drill dozer, expect 1 refuel, and you'll need to collect 150 Morkite. But here's the deal. Mutator in effect. Warning, Swarmageddon. So that means you will be frequently attacked by hordes of swarmlings throughout the entire mission, but you're also in the dense biozone, which means netocytes. Those annoying little jellyfish flying guys that zap you, and none of this will be really that big of a deal until the very end when you've actually got to drill the hardstone, and that's because normally enemies kind of ignore Doretta, meaning you could kind of focus on just killing the enemies and not really defending yourself. Not going to be the case this time. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to be drilling, and then all of a sudden the rocks are coming in, the very dangerous rocks that do a lot of damage to the drill, and while you're trying to kill the rocks, you are just going to get swarmed by swarmlings and netocytes, and if you ignore them, they will chew you up and take you out. But if you get distracted by them, then you're gonna let all of the rocks just start pounding Doretta. It's actually a really good combination for the enemies in this game, and the way I'd suggest dealing with it is at least one of you should be engineer. You really want those turrets. Turrets automate the situation. They're really good against swarming enemies, and they allow you to fight back against the enemies while simultaneously doing other things like reloading or repairing. In addition to that, the engineer isn't bad at dealing with the rocks, especially if you bring something like a shard diffractor. And if you're still worried about those swarming enemies, I would also suggest bringing a driller. You can use the flamethrower to toast them, and you do have to deal with those beamers, and the driller is really good at that. Just equip the drills, walk up to them and drill them, and you'll knock out the beamers. You can also destroy the beamers with certain primaries and certain overclocks that let you destroy the rocks, like the ground, like the earth. Just hit the tips of them, and you can destroy them that way as well. Lastly, use all of your ammo. You've got all the nitra. The nitra, there is no stage 4, doesn't carry any further, so drop in all of that nitra and use all of your equipment, proximity mines, lures, everything that you've got, throw it at it, and knowing this, you should be able to knock out the mission. But let's go ahead and move into the elite deep dives. All right, elite miners, time to get into the elite deep dives. Buckle up, because if you are hoping for an easier Elite Deep Dive this week, I am afraid I will have to disappoint you. It is fairly spicy. Mission 1 will be Hazard 4.5, and I will say this is not the hard mission. If you can handle Hazard 4 to 5, you should be able to do this one. It's fairly routine. The mission objective is to refine liquid morkite. Expect 2 breakdowns in the pipes at the end. You'll also need to collect 2 alien eggs. Expect a swarm. There is a mutator. Warning, low oxygen. That means it's kind of like being underwater. You'll have to go and get oxygen from an oxygen generator. The refinery itself, the platform, as well as the ammo pods you drop in, they will be your sources of oxygen. So when you do call in ammo, think about where you want to position it so that you can both get ammo safely and you're able to get your oxygen, once again, safely. And overall, this is a fairly normal on-site refinement. It is still a high difficulty mission, so don't drop your guard down. The map is pretty small. The path of the pumps are pretty easy, but beware of the cave leeches. I had to retry this mission multiple times because of mission 2 specifically, and I found that sometimes there was 1 cave leech, sometimes there were 2, so just be careful about that. But overall, this should not be the mission that stops you. Mission 2 probably is. Alright, so miners, this is the spicy mission. This is the tough one. If you beat this one, you're probably gonna beat the entire Elite Deep Dive. I'm not saying mission 3 is easy, but it's definitely easier than 2. So do this and you're good. It took me a few tries to beat mission 2, but when I did beat it, I crushed it. So I'm going to tell you what I did. Anyways, mission 2, difficulty hazard 5. Objectives are to salvage 3 mules. Once again, that does mean a full defensive sequence at the end of recovering the down drop pod. You'll also need to kill a dreadnought. Yes, it is going to be the Hive Guard. And there is a mutator in effect, which is warning, shield disruption. So that means no shields at all. Now, to compensate a little bit, you take 30% less damage from enemy attacks and from hostile environmental effects, which you're going to have a lot of because, well, you're in the Hollow Bow. And let's talk about why this mission sucks. So, first off, no shieldings. But you're in Hollow Bow, a place that does a lot of just random damage, so the vines will tear at you, the stabber vine will stab you, the plants don't like you. You're just going to take a lot of chip damage, and it's just gonna erode at your health the same way that the blasting sands eroded the Great Pyramids of Giza, and that's very annoying. The next problem is that the map itself is very dangerous. Lots of pitfalls, very deep pits. If you die down in a pit, that could be the end of the mission because it is very difficult to save people because if the enemies attack and you're in the pit, you're probably doomed because it is a very tight close quarters and it is not easy to escape the pit due to its depth. So, my first piece of advice is stay together. You don't have to literally be side by side, but know where each other are and try not to over-explore because you could get ambushed by enemies. You could just run, take a turn, fall into a pit and die, and then you need to be revived. It's not good. The next key is that you need to bring the correct equipment. That is going to make a big deal. What kind of equipment you need? Anything but scout, really. You need ways to make the land safer. Platform gun, zip line, drilling pathways through it. You need to make the land safer. Really, really big deal. Another thing that's going to help is bringing anti-boss weapons. I highly recommend everyone at least brings 1 anti-boss weapon because you're going to have to fight the Hive Guard and sneak peek more dreadnoughts in the future. So, talking about the Hive Guard, once again, you need anti-boss weapons. That's going to be very important. So that'll be stuff like using the corrosive sludge pump with the Colette wave cooker, which really slows the boss down and does a lot of poison damage over time. The shard diffractor is quite good. The Big Bertha overclock for the autocannon, just anything that wastes bosses. Make sure everyone brings at least 1. Try to fight it at medium range. You cannot afford to get hit by fireballs. Normally you can eat 1 fireball and your shields will come back. Not the case anymore, so you have to play safe, and that means you're going to burn through a lot of ammo unless you bring anti-boss weapons. It's very important that you do that. finally, for the pod defense, the engineer and the gunner are really good here. Why? Because there is two last annoying things. One, there are going to be lots of spitting enemies, web spitters, acid spitters on the roof, sniping you, and you don't have shields. So all the damage they do is permanent damage unless you can get a way to heal yourself. Very annoying. How do you deal with it? Use the platforms to create a roof. Just build them overhead and hide underneath the platforms, and that will block them from shooting you. Great way to do it. You can also use the shielding system from the gunner. Although it won't regenerate your shields, it will protect you. It also allows you to, if you need to reload or rearm your turrets or something, he can throw out the shield. You can all go out into the cover of the bubble and do whatever you need. Revive people, rearm. It's so good. You also can just look up onto the ceiling and clear them out. But, oh man, be careful. It may not happen to you, but a shellback could spawn. And I learned that the shellback just goes right through the shield, and he will just slam you. Not only does it do a truck ton of damage, but it will push you out of the capture zone, which is bad because you need everybody in the capture zone to capture it, and if you all get out of it, then you start losing progress, which means more time for enemies to spawn, and that can quickly spiral out of control. But if you do this, you will find the final area isn't that bad. So get those lures out to get the enemies off of you, build a nice little roof with your engineer, get those turrets down, and you should find that it's not too bad. Be generous with your gear here. This is not the time to try to save your ammo pods. Deploy them, get them in there. You remember that they do heal you, and get through the second mission because there is more ammo in the third mission. So just get through this mission, whatever you do. Right, so mission 3. Like I said, if you made it through 2, it's probably in the bag, but don't drop your guard. Mission 3, hazard difficulty 5.5. Objectives, kill 2 more dreadnoughts. It'll be the twins and a standard glyphid dreadnought, and then you'll have to recover a black box. Overall, not as bad as it could be. There is a surprising amount of nitra, in fact, I would even say a merciful amount of nitra here, which is why use your ammo to get to this mission, because you've got a decent chance of winning it if you get here. Anyways, let's talk about the fights. The Glyphid Dreadnought. The tough part about this one is that the room it appears in is not that big, and the Dreadnought is quite fast, and its stomp is super deadly. It will definitely kill you if he catches you with it. So, before you get the boss fight going, make sure you have a way to run around in circles around the room, both clockwise and counterclockwise. Make sure that you do not ever get trapped, because if you do, you will probably get stomped and killed. And once again, hopefully you brought anti-boss weapons, especially weapons that don't require you to hit their weak point, such as the Shard Diffractor. Yes, it does more damage if you hit the weak point, but it actually damages them straight to its face as well. I used the Smart Rifle with the Seeker rounds, which actually allows the Smart Rifle to hit an enemy's weak point no matter what direction I shoot at them from, and it absolutely ripped this guy up quite nicely. I was very surprised how well it worked out, but otherwise it's going to be a long and painful fight, so bring the right equipment ahead of time. The next fight is going to be the Dreadnought Twins, which is definitely the easier of the two fights. It's in a bigger room, so more room to maneuver, and they're just not a super tough enemy compared to the others. The main strategy is to fight at medium range, because they do have some kind of like shotgun-like attacks, and if you fight at mid-range, it's close enough that you're accurate, far enough that you can dodge their attacks, and also try to damage them equally, because their healing mechanic involves the one with lower health catches up to the one with higher health. So if you mainly concentrate on one, it will recover a huge amount of health, but if you kill them evenly, they'll recover very little health. And for the black box, you've already done the harder version of this in the previous mission. Same concept. Throw down your turrets, call in an ammo pod drop, and just get ready to hose some enemies down. It's not nearly as bad, but this is the end, so don't mess it up. Don't overestimate it. Call in a drop pod and just throw all of the stuff you've got at it. Throw in your lures, your shields, your turrets. just bring the goods home. Like, don't underestimate it, but it isn't nearly as difficult as the drop pod sequence. Okie dokes though, so let's wrap things up with my class recommendations, starting with the deep dive. And honestly, the class that's really good here is the engineer. Engineer has got an answer for just about everything. You've got the salvage ops, the drop pod kind of defense sequence. Engineer's great at that. You've got the drill dozer. Engineer is great against that. You've got swarmers and neticites. Engineer turrets, great there. The only thing the engineer can't really do by default without overclocks is take out the beamers very effectively. You can if you have Plascrete Catalyst for the shard diffractor. That would mean that the next best person would probably either be the driller or the gunner. I would probably go with the driller because you get a little more swarm protection and you get the drilling arms, allows you to knock down the beamers, but otherwise just make sure you got the engineer. For elite deep dive, I would once again go with engineer. I think engineer driller or engineer gunner. The second one depends on what you're more afraid of. There are just so many defensive sequences just all over the place. The on-site refinement, the salvage ops, the black box, and the engineer has a pretty good boss killing weapon with the shard diffractor, so you gotta have that engineer. Also, the platform gun lets you make those roofs to block the sniping spitters, and it lets you make the ground safer. The engineer is just like the MVP here. Now, the second character you'd want will either be the driller if you're worried about the bosses, because you can use that sludge pump and wave cooker combo to slow the bosses down, makes them extremely vulnerable, very easy kills. Or if you're more confident about the bosses and less confident about the defensive scenes, bring the gunner because you get the deployable shield. Obviously, if you've got all three of them, even better. But defense is so important here. Also, the driller and the gunner both bring like zip lines and drill pathways so that you can navigate the really rough terrain so much better. Do those things though, and you've got a reasonable shot at winning. If you can't get through this elite deep dive though, I would say give yourself some credit though, because like I said, the second mission is rough. Anyways, those are my recommendations for this week. Come back next week on Friday for more guides on deep dive and elite deep dive. And if you'd like to get this advice ASAP, remember, check me out on Twitch where I play on Thursdays live Deep Rock Galactic, and I handle both the deep dive and the elite deep dive, so you can see the full journey there. If you'd like to see the episode anyway, don't forget Get Good Fox VODs on YouTube is where I upload all of the streams for anyone who wants to see it after the stream was live, or in the case they don't really like Twitch. I got you covered. Anyways, till next time, remember to rock and stone, and of course remember that you don't have to be good to get good.